Thank you all for joining me today. We are on to, I think, fifth episode of this masterclass of Expat's Guide to Divorce. And today we're going to be talking about how to select your lawyer. And that's a question that I hear a lot in my practice. I have a lot of clients who struggle to find the right professionals because they're looking for someone who has the right expertise, but also doesn't cost them too much and will help serve their interests. And that's really the key here, is how do you select the best lawyer for yourself, given your own individual divorce context and situation. Before we dive in, I want to take a few minutes to kind of set the scene and just clarify who this masterclass is intended for. So anybody who is going through divorce or considering divorce and gathering information is welcome to listen to this information. It's going to be particularly relevant if you're in the early stages of your divorce. Actually, quite a few people change lawyers halfway through, so it can be relevant at any point. If you're an expat or if you're part of an international family, then a lot of the tips I will share apply to you, but I will make sure that whatever I discuss today applies to everyone. I'll just add those elements with regards to the international aspects. The value here is to really try and help you to divorce cheaper, faster, and better. So I want you to move on from your divorce feeling strong and empowered. And to do that, it means that you have to have the divorce that goes as smoothly as possible. And that also means that yourselves and your children come out of the divorce unscathed and ideally in the best possible situation, both financially and emotionally. So I've organized this masterclass because I noticed that there was a lot of hearsay out there, be it on the internet or through friends and family. There's a lot of misconceptions about divorce and about how to proceed. And the value here is to get advice directly from a professional, somebody who is specifically trained on the matters of divorce and who can give you information that is correct, but also based on experience. So avoid finding information online or relying on what people say, because not everyone's divorce is the same, and every single situation has its own requirements and its own backdrop. So this is the main thing that I want to convey today. In that respect, I'm a strong believer that knowledge is power. And so understanding your options, understanding your rights is going to be crucial to allow you to be able to proceed with your divorce in the best possible way. So you want to be clear about what to expect. You want to gather information and have that information at hand throughout your divorce to be as much in control as you can be of this whole situation. And also, the reality is that making mistakes during divorce can be really costly. A lot of the arrangements that you reach during the divorce process are agreements that you're going to have to live with for many years to come. Financial arrangements in particular are very hard to vary. So once you have a deal and it's been signed off by the court to an order, it's really hard to change them. So you're going to have to live with them in most scenarios for quite a while afterwards. Even mistakes on the parenting front can be quite costly because they impact your children directly. So in general, it's always better to do things right the first time rather than try to fix things later on. So let me introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Chloe. I am a Franco-American expat. I've been living abroad for about 20 years. I've been in the UK for 15, and I'm a divorced mother myself, the two preteen girls, and I have a co-parenting relationship with my ex who lives abroad. So I got divorced as an expat, and I continue to parent across borders with my ex. On the professional front, I am a certified divorce coach, which means I was trained specifically to be an alternative dispute resolution specialist, so to support people in resolving their family disputes out of court. And that requires supporting them through the negotiation elements of the divorce and helping them to de-escalate conflict so that they can try and resolve their divorce matters peacefully and out of court. The reason I chose this trade and the reason why I work with people like yourselves is that I want to be able to help you avoid some of the mistakes that I've made and some of the mistakes that I've seen my clients make. And the idea here is to really combine my personal experience of divorce with my professional experience. On the personal front, I am myself divorced, as I mentioned, but I had a bit of an odd journey in that my initial divorce with the father of my children was actually quite an amicable one. We shared a lawyer and we were able to get divorced at minimal cost in a very short timeline and to reach agreements fairly easily. And as a result, he moved out within a few months and he lived down the street. We co-parented efficiently and we had our children happily moving back and forth between the two houses, seeing their parents daily and feeling that sense of stability despite the change. A few years after our divorce, my ex met somebody new, and that completely changed the dynamic of our relationship. Um, Within a few months of meeting her, he moved abroad without warning and categorically refused to speak to me. And because I could not reach him and because we could not speak, our only option was to communicate via lawyers. That was the only way he wanted us to speak to each other. And that made it incredibly difficult. First of all, you can imagine the legal fees that accumulated very quickly every time we needed to exchange any kind of message. But also, we needed to find new parenting arrangements because he was no longer in the same city as us, not even the same country. We need to review our financial arrangements as well because he didn't want to pay maintenance anymore. So it all had to be renegotiated, and we weren't able to speak to each other. So we had to do it entirely through lawyers, and that took a lot of time, a lot of money, but also a lot of stress. And I have those deeply rooted scars of having had to go through the family court system, dealing entirely through lawyers with more or less ethical behaviors, and really the impact that had on me personally, the impact it had on my children, and the impact it had on my ability to co-parent with my ex. Even though up until now we'd been doing it quite successfully, suddenly, without any direct communication, for months and years after that happened, we couldn't speak to each other. We were completely unable to communicate. Trust was completely broken. And it had a really long-term effect on myself, on my children, and on him. So looking at those two experiences and really the contrast between the amicable route and the litigious one, it was very obvious that the impact of going down a more litigious route was incredibly large and really costly in all sorts of costs. And so for me, my mission is really now to help people avoid that mistake and really stay on the amicable track. Doesn't mean they have to be best friends. It doesn't mean they agree on everything, but keeping out of court has a tremendous value that goes way beyond the cost elements. So I bring that experience and I combine it with my professional experience and training. So as a certified divorce coach, I'm specifically trained on how to de-escalate conflict, on how to manage the process of divorce, and how to support people in preparing for every step of the divorce process. So my role is really to be a thinking partner for my clients as they travel through their own journey of divorce. Now, that training, which was theoretical, of course, combined with the many years of professional experience I have working with people like yourselves who are going through divorce and experiencing all sorts of different scenarios, that's what brings me that wealth of expertise that I can then share with my clients, and I can help them avoid those costly mistakes and prepare adequately so that they're in control of their divorce and it's not something that's happening to them. So my philosophy as a divorce coach really relies around 5 pillars. And there are a lot of divorce coaches out there, and there's a lot of them who have different philosophies and different approaches. So it's important, whoever you select to work with, to be clear about what their specific philosophy is around divorce and what it is they're promoting and helping people to do. From my perspective, my focus is really on amicable divorce and helping people divorce with less conflict. So a lot of my clients come to see me, usually in the early stages of their divorce, but with the intent of getting divorced without destroying everything in its wake. So my approach to helping people through these phases is to help them get organized. And the first and most important pillar to that is to help them build a plan. By building a vision of what they want their life to be like after the divorce, and defining what good looks like, we build a plan together. So having a plan is an essential part of the process, and it's definitely something that I work a lot on with my clients. The second element is to put your children at the center. I am a strong believer in families and family values. I believe that divorce reshapes a family, it doesn't destroy it. And if we keep our children's best interest at the center of our considerations, we can make sure that all the decisions we're making during the divorce are beneficial to them. And as much as it's tempting to see divorce as, your ex versus yourself, it really isn't about the two of you. It's about protecting your children, giving them the most stability possible, and making sure that the divorce doesn't become a traumatic experience for them. The third element is to really think long term. So to anticipate some of the things that might change and evolve in your life going forward and create arrangements that are future proof. So rather than just dealing with the current situation you're living in, trying to anticipate some of the things that might happen. For example, if you're an expat and you know that every 3-4 years you're going to be moving countries to change with your company to change roles, then you have to anticipate that and make sure that your arrangements take that into account. Similarly, you're going to want to think ahead to your children growing up, to you and your ex potentially finding new partners, what happens then, etc. Overall, the whole approach is really centered around keeping conflict to a minimum. All the research shows that it's the conflict in the divorce that harms the children the most, and it definitely harms the parents. So if we can keep that level of conflict to the lowest possible level, then we can try and divorce without creating all that acrimony and all those hard feelings. And then that all happens through collaboration and communication and working together effectively as a team, you and your ex, with that shared mission of trying to resolve the divorce problems you're facing rather than trying to win against the other. So, as a summary, if you want to divorce with less if you divorce with less conflict, you eventually win on every bit because you save yourself the stress, you definitely save yourself the legal costs, and you get better outcomes because you're able to negotiate your agreements rather than have a judge dictate what their arrangements should be. So I work with my clients throughout the entire process. A large number of my clients come to me in the very early days of their divorce process. So just around the point where they're making a decision. And in that case, I help them with preparing logistically. I help them build a divorce team, which is what we're going to be talking about today. And I help them think through all the decisions they're going to have to make. But then throughout the divorce process, I help them through the negotiation phase. I help them to manage conflict when there's disagreements, as there always are, and there will be. I help them to build long-term skills so that they can collaborate with their ex and they can co-parent effectively with their ex. But then even after the divorce is over, as in the papers are signed, I help them with all of the steps that need to happen after that. When it comes to settling into a new life, to learning how to co-parent effectively, to rebuild their self-confidence, potentially to start a new career, or just to learn to be a single parent. So the next slide is actually kind of a visual representation of what I'm just explaining. And the reason why I share this slide is because it's really important to stress that divorce is so much more than just the legal part of the process. The legal process itself is kind of the administration of the divorce. The divorce is first and foremost a life experience, and it starts sometimes many years before any papers are filled or any lawyer is spoken to. That whole decision-making stage, that whole period of time where you're wondering whether this is the right relationship for you to be in or whether you want to leave that person, that's already the start of the divorce process. Even once you've decided and you feel ready to take the leap, there's a whole lot of things that need to happen. They have nothing to do with the legal side of things with regards to informing your spouse that you want to divorce, informing your children, your friends, your family, getting prepared logistically, forming a team, as I just mentioned. All of that happens in the very early stages and is typically the kind of thing that I work with my clients on to help them to prepare for the legal process. So even once the legal process kicks in and they need to find a divorce agreements, whether they go to court or they use mediation or collaborative law or negotiate over their kitchen table, there is a process that requires paperwork and administration to finalize those arrangements. So that segment, that legal process, can be short or quite long for some people. It can be years. But what's for sure is that at some point you do reach the end and you do get a final agreement or a final order from the court, but there is that finality in terms of reaching a conclusion to the divorce process. What often happens is that at that stage, your team demobilizes. Your lawyer is no longer required. Your friends and family are usually worn out and don't really want to hear you talk about your divorce anymore. In their mind, it's done. You've signed the papers. Move on now. But for you as an individual, the journey of healing and continuing to rebuild yourself can take quite a long time. And so for the parents, the children, there's a whole readaptation phase where you're learning to find a new equilibrium and to learn how to work together in a very different way and to operate as a family that's shaped differently to what it was shaped, to how it was shaped before. So the journey can be, over decades for some people. It's definitely way beyond only the legal element of things. So what makes the difference in terms of those who manage to have a successful divorce, as painless as possible, as quick as possible, as cheap as possible, and those who can't, is three main elements. The first one is preparation. So taking time to gather facts, to gather documents, to be prepared emotionally before starting the process. The second is mindset. Understanding what divorce is, having the right expectations with regards to the process, with regards to what you're likely to get out of the divorce. And then the last one is support, being supported by the right professionals and the right people within that professional category. So selecting the right professionals to surround you. That's what we're going to be talking about mostly today. Before we dive in, I wanted to share this story of one of my clients. Her name is not Emily. I've changed it for today's purposes, but her story is the same, despite the change in names. And Emily came to me because she had been advised by her lawyer to file for divorce without telling her spouse in order to secure the jurisdiction and to make sure that she could get divorced in the UK. And because that was considered the best jurisdiction for her in terms of the possible outcomes she might reach. What happened is that the lawyer told her that she shouldn't tell her husband about it because there was a risk he would file in France, where they were originally from, and that she should file without telling him, and then they would deal with the consequences of the divorce afterwards. Now, every bone in her body told her that wasn't great. She didn't feel that her husband deserved to be served papers without having been spoken to, but because she was being advised to do that by a lawyer, she went ahead and did it. And what happened is probably what a lot of people could have anticipated, is because her husband was informed officially of her decision to divorce, but not by herself, he completely disengaged from the process, refused to engage with her and to speak to her, refused to negotiate. He was extremely angry at their approach. It felt very aggressive to him, and he decided to write back. And so for many months, she and him were going in circles where he wouldn't communicate and they couldn't reach any kind of agreements, and the costs were escalating. And at that point, she came to see me. And she and I sat down and kind of click the reset button. We thought about what she wanted to achieve, what good looked like for her and success looked like for her in the context of this divorce. What were her main objectives? But also we helped to reestablish communication with her ex so that there could be a conversation and negotiation. So it didn't have to end up in court with everyone strong muscling the other. And what happened is that she managed to unlock the situation. And so she limited her legal costs because there was no need for lawyers anymore through that process. And once they finally sat down, they managed to find an agreement within a few weeks. And they managed to get divorced within 8 weeks. So they were incredibly happy with the way that things progressed, but also it was an investment in their future relationship, because if they'd continued down that litigious route, they would never have been able to communicate again. But because we started shifting the dynamic early enough, there was an opportunity to recreate that communication and to create an atmosphere that allowed for negotiations. So today, as you know, we're talking about how to select your lawyer. And there's a number of questions you want to ask a lawyer when you're interviewing them. The main thing to remember is that you're interviewing them. You're the client. And while it might be intimidating to speak to somebody who's in a position of power and is clearly very educated, you remember that you have the choice and you can choose your lawyer, and you are a client, so you can ask to be served in a way that works for you. The lawyer in question may say yes or no, but you need to be clear about what your needs are and how you expect to work with them. So the first question that I would recommend you ask your client, your lawyer, is what kind of experience they have, right? So you want to explain your scenario and understand whether they have experience working in that kind of context, whether it's experience working across different jurisdictions that you have in your case, or working with children in cases where there's children with special needs, if that's your situation, or whether it's high net worth individuals, whatever your context. You want to make sure that it's a context that's familiar to that lawyer, that they know how to work with those kind of challenges. You can ask them that point blank, or you can ask them little case studies, explain a specific challenge you're facing and ask them how they would deal with that. Ask them in general what their philosophy about divorce is. How would they deal with the situation? How likely are they to use the court system rather than try to use negotiation to resolve these problems? You can actually ask them what percentage of their cases are mediated versus the ones that go to court or other ways. So trying to understand in general what their approach is and what kind of experience they have. Another interesting question is to ask them who their typical client is, because that's going to give you a lot of insights around who they work with and what kind of cases they usually deal with. If you know the name of your ex's lawyer, ask them if they know them. If you can find a lawyer who knows the other side's lawyer as well, that will help, because they might have a relationship already and they can build on that trust. They know how to work together and to collaborate. And that's a massive asset for both of you. In some cases, it's checking that they speak your language. It avoids having to translate a whole myriad of documents. So there's a lot of different elements that you're going to want to dive into based on your specific case to understand whether their experience is relevant to you. The second question is relating to how you work together. So what kind of interaction can you expect with your lawyer? Do they work via email, or do they have calls every time? How long does it typically take them to respond to an email, or how long does it take to get a call in their diary? Those are all important questions. I hear a lot of clients complaining about lawyers not getting back to them. We're not getting back to them in a timely manner. It's true that when you're the person divorcing and something happens and you write to your lawyer asking a question and they don't answer, you're left there biting your nails, and it could be days or weeks before you get an answer, and it can be incredibly stressful. So ask for ETAs for responses, whether they work by email or by calls. What's the best approach? You may consider putting a weekly call in the diary at a touch point, and then you cancel it if it's not needed. Think about creative ways that are going to allow you to have access to your lawyer when you need them without having to worry about long delays. With regards to working together, another element to explore is whether your lawyer has associates. So do they work on their own, or do they have juniors in their team who deal with the paperwork and some of the admin? Now, that can be really advantageous from a cost perspective, because the juniors can do all of the stuff that doesn't require expert knowledge, and that they do it at a much reduced rate. The downside for some people is that they want to be talking to their lawyer every day, not to the associate. And sometimes the associate can take on a bigger role, and you don't really end up having ongoing conversations with your lawyer. So think that through and define the best way of working together when it comes to dealing with the associate and the lawyer, whether they both join meetings, those kind of things. Of course, if they both join meetings, you're paying for both of them. So think that through and really try and set up that team in the best possible way. One other thing that I would recommend is asking them what they're going to take responsibility for versus what you're going to take responsibility for. If you're trying to limit costs, you may want to take responsibility for more of the work. So, for example, you do the first draft of some of the letters rather than asking the lawyer to write them. Instead of exchanging emails back and forth, maybe just have a quick call and have a conversation to sort things out. So agreeing those ways of working and who's in charge of what, to be very clear about expectations of each other, but also to try and limit as much as possible using your lawyer for things that you could do yourself. And then the third question is the obvious one, which is how much is it going to cost? Now, the big mistake that people make is that they select their lawyer entirely based on how much they cost. And of course, there are lawyers in various price ranges, and you will find some that are cheaper than others. At the end of the day, a divorce is costly, and it's going to cost you money. And what's going to make a difference is not if a lawyer charges £50 more or less an hour, it's how you utilize them. The way in which you leverage them and the number of hours you're asking of them to support you is going to make a massive difference. So if you can work with other professionals, like a divorce coach, for example, then you can use the divorce coach at a much reduced rate to help you with the things that aren't legal advice. And you're tapping into your lawyer only for items that really relate to the law that are worth spending that money for. The other thing to explore is how the lawyer is going to charge you. Do they charge you a flat fee? Can they give you an estimate of costs? Usually they give you quite a wide bracket, but it's always worth asking. Would they consider being paid after the settlement goes through so that you have the cash at that stage? There's a lot of different models that can be looked into in terms of how you get charged for the costs. In that same respect, you want to check how often they're going to bill you, especially if you're trying to monitor your budget. Make sure that they're billing you on a regular basis. Because if they wait 6 months to send you an invoice, it's going to be a big one, and it's going to be scary, and it's usually going to be a surprise. So agree with them up front a frequency for those bills. So whether it's a certain amount of time, say monthly, or if it's every time you hit a certain milestone, every £1,000, for example, that's going to be a really helpful way for you to monitor your spending and make sure that you're not caught off guard with a massive bill. It also means that if you notice that the spending is going up too fast, you can pivot. So you can start taking responsibility for some of the work, like I discussed before, and let them do really only the essential stuff that relates to legal work. Or you can change strategies with regards to how you're going to divorce, move into mediation, for example. So being able to monitor the costs and make sure that they don't escalate without you noticing is an incredibly important part to iron out early on. The fees, once again, are an important factor, but should not be your only selection criteria. In that respect, I'd also say that anybody who recommends a lawyer to you is being really helpful, but they might have liked that lawyer based on their specific style, their specific situation, the way they wanted to deal with their divorce. So keep in mind that if someone was brilliant, a lawyer was brilliant for your friend, it doesn't mean they'll be brilliant for you. If you have different values, different objectives, different priorities, or just a very different setup, then they might not be the best person for you. So no matter where the name of that lawyer came from, make sure that you do your due diligence, that you look into who they are, what they do, and ask them all the questions I've just mentioned. So in summary, I'd say there's kind of 3 things that I want you to remember from today. The first one is that you are the client. You get to choose. You do not have to take whoever is recommended to you or whoever you found on the internet. Speak to several lawyers. Explore different types and styles of lawyers. Try and understand who is best for you based on how you usually work. Think of business relationships you have. What's particular about how those relationships work that make them successful? That's what you're going to look for in your lawyer. The second, which I've mentioned a couple of times, is do not choose your lawyer based only on price. There's not a sufficient reason to go for one person versus another. And the last one is to trust your instinct. So I've just talked through a lot of different questions you can ask lawyers, but what you're trying to ascertain really is, do I feel like I can work with this person? Do I trust them? Do I want to entrust them with my life right now in sorting out my life for the years to come? So if somebody gives you a good feeling of confidence, of trust, of having the right kind of approach and way of thinking about divorce, same kind of values as you, then that's a really important piece of information. And on the flip side, if somebody doesn't inspire trust or seems dishonest to you or whatever it might be, trust your gut, because you're going to be working with this person for quite a while. And it's usually a bit costly to change lawyers and disruptive. So you want to avoid doing that. So really listen to your gut and follow what it's telling you when you're trying to select the right person. So before we wrap up, I wanted to just share with you a special offer that I offer at the end of every one of these master classes for anybody who's joined. I will offer you a discount for the next week until Friday. If you book a discovery call, a free discovery call with me through my website, there's a QR code on screen. If you book it before Friday, you don't have to have had it by Friday just to book it, and you enter Expat offer in the comments, then I will give you a massive discount. You will be entitled to £200 off your first bundle of 9 sessions. And I will share with you my free long distance parenting plan template to help you, once you get to that stage, to draft parenting arrangements if you're planning to be far away from your ex. So book your discovery call by Friday, 5 p.m. Enter the code Expat offer in the comments, and that way you'll be eligible for this massive discount. You can have that free call, talk about your situation. I can tell you how I can help you, or if I can help you. If I cannot, I will direct you towards other professionals who can, and I will make sure that I can support you through this process. And especially, you will get this massive discount that will help you to reduce your costs even further. So for those of you who want to get in touch, I would recommend, first of all, checking out my website. There are a huge number of free resources on there, including free podcasts, articles, videos, blog posts, you name it. There is a huge number of documents and videos on there you can look at and self-serve to gather information and make sure that you understand exactly what divorce looks like and you get answers to all the questions you might have. If you'd like to have some personalized support based on your specific situation and to help you through the journey of divorce, then get in touch for a free discovery call. As you know, you're eligible for this discount. You can also just drop me an email. My email's on screen. My phone number's on screen. Don't hesitate. You can drop me a message or call me or send me an email, and we can have a quick chat and see how I can help you. So please don't hesitate to get in touch. The whole point of these masterclasses is to help you get the support you need. Are there any questions before I close the call? We haven't seen any questions in the chat, and there don't seem to be any popping up, so I will assume everybody is clear about everything I've shared today. And I'd like to thank you all for joining me. It was a pleasure seeing you all, and have a lovely day.